What is going on, everybody, and welcome on into the Dawg House. Back here for our Browns preview show, where we are going to talk about Browns and Steelers week as we get ready for Thursday night football. Yes, they are going to put this team on a primetime game on Thursday night, and we're going to watch them go up against the AFC North leading Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to talk about all that and so much more. So welcome on into the Dawg House. I'm your host, Michael Keefe at Garage Pierce Mike. Before we get going, let's start with just some procedural stuff. One, we are here live on the OBR streaming network. Whether you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Whether you are on Twitch, make sure you hit follow. Whether you're watching on X, just make sure you're on the OBR's channel and you hit follow to make sure you are following everything good going on with the OBR and the best Cleveland Browns coverage in all of Cleveland. You can also find me at Garage Pierce Mike over there on the socials as well. Also, get over to obr.com and make sure you are, theobr.com. Let me make sure I give you the right website. Theobr.com. Make sure you are subscribed over there. And I don't know why my lighting does this. It's like I'm going in and out of I don't know. It's like I have a flashlight going. Make sure you get over to theobr.com, hit subscribe, and you'll be tuned in to all the best Cleveland Browns coverage for all the written side of things, the analysis, the statistics, all that. Anywhere in Cleveland, it's all happening here on the OBR and at theobr.com. I have got a great special guest coming in, but he isn't coming in until about 8:30. So I'm going to hang out with you until then because, again, I know this is our preview show. And I know I come on and just always kind of look ahead. That's what I love about the show is that it's always kind of looking ahead. We look back at how the teams got to where they are, but it's always looking ahead, seeing where we're going to go with the Cleveland Browns. And so I've got Mark Bergin coming in. He hosts the Bleav In Steelers podcast. Again, we love the Bleav Network here on my show. We get great guests from the Bleav Network. And Mark Bergin, we had him on last year to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And it was a little bit of a different tone there, but I'm going to have Mark on about 8:30. He's going to come on and we're going to look forward to that. And that's all going to lead us in to a great episode of Garage Beers at 9. So I'm going 2.5 straight hours here as we do an hour of the Dawg House, and then Garage Beers is kicking off right at 9 o'clock, and we're talking Buckeyes, we're talking Browns and Cavs and so much more. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So listen, again, I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll just start the show at 8:30. We'll do a quick show. We'll just do a quick kind of preview episode, 20 minutes in and out, boom. And then I thought, you know what? Of all the things, I need a minute with you guys to vent about the Cleveland Browns. And I need a minute for you guys to vent back at me about the Cleveland Browns, because I got to tell you, I always feel a little bit inferior here on the OBR and the OBR streaming network in that we've got such talented men and women that cover the Cleveland Browns, and they dive into we got Jack Duffin over there diving into the numbers, and you got Fred and Brad and Noah that are in there doing insider information. And you got Brad Ward and Pete Smith and Casey and Jacob and Abby and all of these people that do this incredible work and who I think are so much smarter than me in so many areas of the game. But I very rarely do I come on and just want to just rant about the Browns. But that's what we're going to do for about a half hour. We're just going to get this. We're going to get this going. We're going to get this going. We're going to rant about the Cleveland Browns because I feel like I'm the biggest. I'm the most fan guy. I'm not the biggest fan. I shouldn't say that. They are all crazy fans. But I'm the fan guy on the OBR. And I don't know. I think it's time for us to come to grips with the football team that we have here in Cleveland. And I think it's time for us to come to grips on the expectations and the reality that we face year in and year out here in Cleveland. And it hit me as I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to talk about on the show. What hit me is, I don't know why, even with the players, even with the contracts, even with the two-time coach of the year and a guy in Andrew Berry that a lot of people were really high on, and all of that, I don't know why we continue to do this at the beginning of years, because the Cleveland Browns haven't put together 2 successful seasons ever. Not since they've returned in 1999 have the Cleveland Browns put together two really good, successful seasons. I mean, look at what this team has done since it's come back in 99. You had the early years, which were bad, but we were all just excited to have him back. And then you had Butch Davis come in, and it felt like, okay, Butch has got something going with Tim Couch or Kelly Holcomb, and they made the playoffs. And what did they do after they made the playoffs? Nothing. It was a period of several years where they were bad again. And then 2007 hit, and it was Derek Anderson and Braylon Edwards and Kellen Winslow, but he was there and he was good. And a good set of defensive players. And their one Jim Sorgi start, the one Indianapolis Colts start of Jim Sorgi allowing the Jacksonville Jaguars to win a game away from making the postseason in 2007. And what happens in 2008? They're bad. And then they're just bad again for a while. And then 2014 hits. And amongst all the Johnny Mania, Brian Hoyer has this team sitting in a good spot midway through the year. Things are looking pretty good. But the Johnny Mania gets to everybody's head, and the team falls apart at the end of the year. And then what happens after that? Nothing. They're bad. And they were bad until 2018, in which they were still not great. But you had this hope. Nick Chubb and Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett and David Njoku and Denzel Ward, and you felt, oh, man, all right, we got something going here. And especially once you got Hugh out of the way. Nobody was insisting on playing Carlos Hyde and Tyrod Taylor and all that anymore. And it felt like, okay. And 2019, and Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield can't stop himself from running right out of the pocket anytime there's a hint of pressure, and it's a bad year. And 2020 is amazing. And you make the playoffs and you beat the Steelers, and by all accounts, you really had a great shot to beat the Chiefs in 2020 in the playoffs. 2021, the Baker shoulder. And then the Baker divorce. And the Deshaun Watson saga. And 2022 sucked. I mean, it was okay. Jacoby Brissett was all right, and it was fine, but it wasn't a great year. And then last year, they come out and win a ton of games again, and they're exciting, and Flacco mania and all. There's never been a time in our history since they've returned that they've put together 2 years back to back of good football. And this year just continues the trend. It just continues the trend. So in my head, where I feel as a Browns fan, and you guys jump in too, but when I look at a team like the Detroit Lions, and it's a team that made a run last year all the way to the NFC title game, and yeah, they lost to the 49ers, but it's not fluky when they do it. It's not fluky. They came out again this year. They made the NFC title game last year, and now they look like the best team in football this year. It's not a fluky roster. It's not a fluky system. It's not a fluky coaching staff. It is, they put together a good team, a good organization, a good roster, and they come out and they play well. And I don't understand. I guess I don't understand how that has been so hard for the Cleveland Browns. I don't understand. You've got this group of guys, Myles Garrett and Denzel and Nick Chubb and David Njoku and all these guys. And you can't put together 2 back-to-back competitive seasons out of these guys? What's happening? How do we get to this point? And I think the thing that's been most frustrating to me this season is you hear guys talking about accountability. And I will say, I do think leaders step up in this area. I love what we've heard out of Denzel Ward. I love Denzel Ward coming out and talking about how embarrassed they are to give up the amount of points they did in the Saints game and how embarrassing the defense was. But you got a lot of guys talking about accountability. And I guess for me, it's where is it coming from? Where's the real accountability? Who's accountable? Who's accountable to who? Where is somebody that's going to say the way that we've done things for 25 years is not good enough? who's going to come in and say, we're not going to be a team that builds up a great roster and puts together good young talent. And sorry, but you're going to have to just enjoy 1 year at a time, one on year, one off year. Again, I have no idea what happens with the lighting on my camera. It just adjusts. So we're going to just keep playing around with it until we get something to happen. It's very frustrating. And I know it is for you guys as fans. I know it's frustrating for all of us, because how you get to this point. And I got to tell you where I'm at now. I'll tell you where I'm at right now. I've been the most staunch Kevin Stefanski supporter. I've been a very staunch Andrew Berry supporter. I have been a supporter of stability and of giving guys a chance to build something. But at some point, it wears on all of us, doesn't it? I know a lot of you guys as fans have been ready to get rid of Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski. Hey, maybe it's the glasses. I don't know. I know a lot of you guys have been ready to get rid of, start over, bring new people in, all that stuff. It's not exactly my style. But 2-8 coming off of a season where you lost Nick Chubb, where you had injuries on that offensive line, where you lost Deshaun Watson, although I feel like maybe that wasn't such a bad thing even last year. Where you had to fight through injuries and different guys at different spots having to find different ways to play. And you did it in such an effortless and flawless way that I think there's no excuse this year. There's no excuse for them to come out and do what they did. When I saw what they did on Sunday, and in fairness, I was sitting there, I was listening. I couldn't even watch it. I was listening to Andrew Siciliano and Nathan Zagura, and those guys put on a great call of the game. When I was listening to that game, there's no excuses anymore. This compilation of guys is one of the worst teams in football. Like, that sank into me as I was prepping for the show. And I know everybody's going to be like, well, they're 2-8, obviously. Nah, I think when they're 2-8 coming off a season like they did last year and with the guys they have on the team, you think, all right, well, there's got to be things. There's got to be some fluky things. I've been kind of waiting this whole season for things to click, right? All right, well, if the offensive line just gets healthy and gets back out there, things will click. Nick Chubb will get going, things will click. Jameis Winston and these receivers are going to start clicking. This defense, man, couple blown games here and there, but they're going to 2-8. You're not clicking. There's no clicking anymore. That's the most disappointing part about where they're at. There's no clicking. You literally are easily one of the 3 worst teams in football. You're getting your doors blown off by New Orleans, a team that came into the game with 3 wins. Doors blown off. Your doors are getting blown off by Taysom Hill's running for 200 yards. And Derek Carr is efficient and just passing the ball all over the place. That's where we're at. There isn't a single team. Think about the rest of this schedule. Think about the Steelers. We're going to talk about the Steelers again. I've got Mark Bergin coming on at 8:30. Think about the Steelers coming up this week. You think the Steelers are for 1 second? Do you think they are for 1 second thinking that this is going to be all that tough of a game? I don't. No disrespect to some of the guys. I don't mean to be disrespectful to any singular player, but as a collective, as a group, do you think there's anything about the Browns right now that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at on Thursday night going, man, that's going to be tough? I don't. They're pushovers right now. The rest of the schedule: Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Cincinnati. Any of these teams, even Denver. I think Denver's looking at the Browns going, the Denver Broncos, here's where we're at 2-8. Here's where we're at. The Denver Broncos Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos are looking at that game against the Cleveland Browns going, all right, chalk that up as a win. We're back to that. And I don't know. You can say all the coaching upheaval doesn't look great. Certainly doesn't look great. I wasn't a big Alex Van Pelt fan, but man, it seems like he meshed okay with quarterbacks and with Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Dorsey, it's been tough. Or Ken Dorsey, sorry. Bubba Ventrone. The Browns they've got to have the worst special teams in all of the league. Or if they don't, it's close. Every time a team decides to return a punt or a kick, it feels like when they let a touchback happen, they're saving the Browns, doesn't it? Like when they just let it go into the end zone and they don't return it, it feels like, oh, thank God they're saving the Browns. Because they can't cover. Dustin Hopkins has completely got the yips, so he can't missing 27-yard kicks. So the coaching turnaround obviously has caused issues. And you talk about, well, Deshaun Watson was the worst quarterback in football, so that doesn't help. And you talk about injuries and all that, but it's all stuff they've overcome. It's all stuff that we've seen them overcome. And this year's group is just not about it. They can't overcome anything. And that's, for me, that's I don't know what they have to do. I don't know what they have to build, and I don't know what they have to do differently to not just put a roster full of guys that are supposed to be good on the field and say, hey, here's a roster of guys that are supposed to be good, to turn that into a franchise that understands what it takes to win and fights and scratches and claws every week to get it done. I think this team has guys that do that. Never in my entire life will you ever hear me question the toughness and desire of David Njoku. Ever. That dude goes out there and fights, and he gets hurt, and then he comes back in, and he burns up his whole body, and he comes back and plays in a mask looking awesome the next week, and he fights through everything. Denzel Ward. Who would blame Denzel Ward for just hanging up his helmet and walking away? He played a great game this last week. He fights through it. Myles Garrett fighting through injuries all season long, fighting through it. But I think there's a culture here that is just not conducive. And I think that has to fall back on Kevin and Andrew and the entire front office. Doesn't it? I'm going to be sad, but I don't see another outcome to this. I don't know how you get to a different outcome other than saying, whoa, the team that won 11 games last year that made the playoffs, is there another win on this schedule? Now, you can't play the schedule game because they weren't supposed to win the Baltimore game, so you never know what game they're going to come out and win. But I can't imagine you come out of the season with 3 or 4 wins. Let's assume they can get 1 or 2 more wins. I can't imagine you come out of this season with 3 or 4 wins and anybody's coming back. Because I don't think they've built the culture that saves jobs. Because even though I like Kevin Stefanski, and even though he is a Coach of the Year candidate, or he's a 2-time Coach of the Year, doing this every other year, we're good, we're bad, we're good, we're bad. We always have excuses for being bad. Then we're good, then it's fun. Everybody's having a great time. Yay. Kevin Stefanski post-game videos and getting posted on Twitter, and everybody's excited. The next year we're bad because, injuries, blah, blah, blah. And then we're good. It doesn't cut it. This is not how you build an organization. This is not how things need to operate. The culture is not there. And it starts with Jimmy Haslam, and it works all the way down. The culture is not there. And I don't know if it's as simple as like Detroit. I'm going to keep comparing them to Detroit because they were the laughing stock of the league with the Browns. Is it as simple as Just finding enough of the right players. The Browns have got to have enough of the right players. And then getting somebody like Dan Campbell that understands culture. Could it be that simple? Are we watching it with the Cavaliers this year? They make a change at the coach and all of a sudden they're 15-0. I know they're struggling tonight, but is it as simple as that? I love Kevin Stefanski. I like the mind that he is. I love his demeanor as far as just the way he kind of handles business and he thinks before he acts. I don't think there's anything about the culture of the Cleveland Browns that you can point at and say he has built that into a sustainable winning culture. And that's part of his job. And it trickles down to the coaches that he brings in. It's part of their jobs. And I got to tell you, on the accountability front, I get a little tired of people that only want to say, well, they only want to talk about accountability, but they only want to face accountability when there is no accountability really to face. I get a little tired of that. Last year, when the Browns were playing real well, you'd have guys coming out in press conferences saying, yeah, but I just got to be better at this or that. And it was like, wow, that guy's taking accountability, even though the Browns have won a bunch of games and things are great. Now this year, everybody's annoyed with every question they get asked. And nobody gives an answer to anything. And I don't have high expectations out of press conferences ever, because these guys get coached to not really say anything in press conferences. But it's funny, the year where you need to take accountability, you don't want to do it. Anybody else notice that? Anybody else notice that there's players that are taking accountability? Again, Denzel Ward said it after the Saints game. He came out and said, we are so much better than that. And he was embarrassed. But I'm not seeing out of the coaching staff at all. We just got to be better and we got to clean this up. Okay. All right. And then acting annoyed when people ask questions about why you're so bad. Well, you're going to get those questions. That's part of the job. And if you're uncomfortable with it, I don't know why you're in the job. And frankly, if you're not willing to take the accountability when it's due, if you're not willing to take the accountability when there's a reason that you need to, it's a level of kind of tucking your tail and running back into the locker room that I think, again, just speaks to the culture. And if you're only going to talk when you're good, and you only want to say things when things are going well, and you only want to take faux accountability and saying, well, I know we won 31-10, but I could have made a better play call on this. But then when you're 2-8 and you want to come out and just be like, I don't know what to tell you. We just got to be better. Your questions are stupid. I'm walking away. And that's what it feels like from the organization. So it's just, again, for me, it's a little bit of a vent session. And I know it's not specific to any one thing. It's not specific to stats. It's not specific to analytics. It's not specific to the future and the team. But this is that culture thing. And now there's serious doubt. Kevin's been here since 2020. And it's been up and down. And they all thrust themselves into a situation with a quarterback that it did not work out. And there is no hope for. And I know people are going to be like, well, maybe next year he's going to suck even more. And that part sucks. But I just don't see the fight. I know a lot of you guys are bringing up Juan Thornhill on the long pass play to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I think there's a couple situations where you can look out there and say, I don't know what team that is, but this is not a team that's scrapping and clawing and fighting to show that they're not supposed to be a 2-win team at this point. They look exactly like a 2-win team. They look exactly like a 2-win team. I don't know how we got to this. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we let this get to this point. Again, we can point to specifics and injuries and guys getting older and guys not playing their best and contract situations and all that. But if the culture was built the right way in this town, in this team, if the culture was built the right way in this organization, the pieces are there. They could have come out and competed this year. And you took that first loss to the Cowboys, and you came back and beat the Jags, which is the only team worse than the Browns this year. And then you just took loss after loss after loss. And you want to look back and say, they let a game get away against the Giants. They let a game get away against the Commanders. They should have been better against this team. They should have been better against that team. They let a game get away against the Bengals. Fact of the matter is, they didn't let anything get away. They just weren't good enough. And that's where this football team is at this point. I don't mean to be overly depressing. I just don't know where you go. I don't want to hear about, they can make these fixes in the offseason. Because, again, the roster talent is still going to be there next year. You're still going to have a lot of insanely talented guys that other teams would trade for in a heartbeat on this roster next year. But if that culture isn't there, if they're not accountable and tough, if they're not being held to a higher standard in their own building, then it's going to amount to the same thing. You might have a decent year next year because the talent's here. But then in 2 years, it's going to be bad again. And then you might have a decent year the year after that. But that's where we're at. We ride this roller coaster. And it's just unbelievable to me when I went back and looked and thought about what this team has been since 2019. We talk a lot about the fact they haven't had they're going to open and close their stadium without hosting a playoff game. We talk a lot about they haven't had a sustained run. They've won one playoff game. But it isn't just that. They haven't put 2 seasons together. They haven't put 2 good seasons together. And the fact that they are one of the worst teams in football this year is inexcusable. That game against the Saints, offensively, Jameis moved the ball, broke a couple big plays. That touchdown to Elijah Moore was nice. They still can't run the ball. I do not know why they cannot run the ball, but they cannot run the ball. And then defensively, you're back. This is every bit of that Joe Woods defense, isn't it? Are we all having those flashbacks? Are we all having the flashbacks to receivers just running wide open in the soft zone Joe Woods defense? Which, by the way, Joe Woods and the Saints this week. I've had flashbacks all season long about that New York Jets game when Joe Flacco found wide open receivers and the Browns blew that game 2 years ago. That's where I'm at. It's I want to look forward and say, all right, well, listen, if they can figure out the quarterback thing, if they can address the offensive line, defensively, they should still be good. And they should still be good. I don't know that I can say, I think, hey, culture-wise, they've got it figured out. Because they don't. And now this week, you get the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, in just about 2 minutes, Mark Bergin's going to jump on, and he's going to preview this Browns-Steelers game with me. But this is you're talking about, we're going to talk about this week, a tale of the 2 polar opposites, aren't we? This Pittsburgh Steelers team that was supposed to crash and burn every year since Ben Roethlisberger left. And even the last couple of years of Ben Roethlisberger being there. And they were supposed to crash and burn. And what have they done? They've won every year. Still not a losing season in Pittsburgh. First place in this division. With Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. And you get rid of Deontay Johnson. Doesn't matter. The defense is still one of the best in the game. And they built a culture. And the culture in that building is, this is why Mike Tomlin is the best. And I love Pittsburgh fans still want to get rid of Mike Tomlin. The culture in that building is, you're not coming here to lose. I don't care whether you're just a mid-level player. You're going to come and be better here than you were at the last place. That's the difference, isn't it? How often do guys come here from other places and they're better than what they were? Not a ton, but they do it in other towns. So, listen, we're going to talk about this Browns-Steelers game, Thursday Night Football. Part of me is glad. Let's get it done on Thursday Night Football, and that way Sunday we can just all relax and hang out with our families and watch other football. But Thursday's going to be a challenge. And who knew coming in that you were going to have to worry about the Pittsburgh Steelers? But you do. So, like I said, hang out here with me for a bit. Let me know if there's anything you want to hit on. Again, my guest should be on any minute here. Mark Bergin coming on from the Bleav In Steelers podcast for the Bleav Network. And we're going to preview this game as the Cleveland Browns somehow look to get away from this losing spell. It's so hard after the bye week too, isn't it? You felt like after the bye, okay, they go into the bye. Jameis is going to have a little bit of extra time to work with these guys. And they look fine. Jameis looked okay. But it's still, this has not clicked. And I think it's going to mean jobs. And I hate the thought of it. We're going to have beer later. I hate the thought of another coaching surge and another GM surge and talking ourselves into the right guys here or there. And look, this is what you get. Harold says it on YouTube. And I love technology. Just kick me off my own stream. That's fine. We're back. Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty. But listen, we're still going to root for the Browns. I know Harold's saying this. I think a lot of people feel the same way. I'll be betting on every Browns opponent this season. I hope I lose, but I'm sure I won't. Yeah, listen, we all feel the same way. Do you want to come out? I know a lot of people are going to come out and say, hey, I'm not going to be mad at this point. At 2-8, they could win the rest of their games and finish 9-8. You're not going to make the playoffs. So there's no future of this season for this team. It's the other hard pill to swallow, man. Now these games are just for pride, I guess. But you still want them to win. But the beat down this team has put on, I saw it in the comments before. The fact that there's just a lot of guys, there's a lot of fans. MC Lawrence said it before. First time in my life I've been indifferent about the game this week. Will you feel different Thursday about 8 o'clock? Yeah, probably. And when you hear Steelers fans talking about this game coming up, is it going to make you feel a little bit differently? Of course. Yes, it is. And when you see those two teams out on the field, are you going to feel different? Yeah, of course. But this is what the Browns have done to us this season. I was out working in the yard listening to the game. I didn't have any desire to run in and watch on Sunday. That's where we're at. So anyways, let's talk about Thursday night's game. Let's talk about one of the great old rivalries in all of the NFL, and let's do it with a friend of the show that we had on last season to talk about this game under much different circumstances. But now we're going to bring him back on again. He is the host of the Bleav In Steelers podcast for the Bleav Network. Let's bring him on right now. It's Mark Bergin. Mark, welcome back into the doghouse.
Mike, thanks for having me. And what I hear sounds like apathy, where it's like, what I wanted to ask you right off the top is, what the hell has happened to the Cleveland Browns from last year's playoff game against the Houston Texans to this point in the 2024 season? Because you were flying high a year ago, and now it's just like, what is the trajectory? Where do the Browns go from here?
Hey, listen, I just spent about a half hour talking, just screaming into the void, basically, about that. Because truthfully, Mark, this is something we all should have seen coming. We should have all seen it coming. This is a Cleveland Browns organization. Again, people are gonna be like, you already said this, but it's a Cleveland Browns organization that hasn't put together two good seasons back to back in ever. It's been since the 90s and the 80s since there's been two good seasons back to back. So even in this run under Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry and all that of better football, it's been one good season, one bad season. A good year, a Baker Mayfield injury. A good year, Deshaun Watson suspended and you're playing with Jacoby Brissett. A good year with Joe Flacco, and now this season. We have not put together two good seasons since returning in 1999. So I don't know. I think we all have this kind of era, and I think if you're not from here, you kind of have this little bit of surprise, right, Mark? Where like, how does this happen? This is what they've been for 25 years.
Yeah, I look at all the first rounders defensively, and Jim Schwartz seemed to have them going a year ago. I mean, really leading up to that playoff game where defense was playing at as high a level as any team in the league, led up front with Myles Garrett. And you've got a really good secondary. I look at all the first round picks. You know, if you're a first round pick, that caliber of talent, it's like Cleveland loaded up defensively with that. So that's what I look at. And I mean, like, Michael, I mean, I want to talk about this week's game. Don't get me wrong, but like, if you're in charge of the Browns, what do you do to get this moving in the right direction? Forget this season, but for say 2025, because you're still stuck with that Watson contract, and it's the contract, it's the money and the picks that you gave up to get him. So like, so long as he's on the roster, you're kind of stuck in the situation that you are now. But what do you do?
You know, it's an interesting thing because I don't feel like it's as hopeless with the Deshaun thing as I think a lot of people make it seem. Yeah, the money's there, the hits on the roster, it's going to be there, but you're going to have the Cleveland Browns are one of the worst teams in football this year. There's no way they're coming out of these last 7 games, 2 against Pittsburgh, another Baltimore, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Miami. There's no way you're coming out of that stretch. Even Denver. You're not coming out of that stretch with more than a couple more wins the way this team is playing. And that's if you can get a couple more wins. That's like the optimist side of things, right? So you're going to have a shot at a quarterback. You're going to have a shot at a quarterback on a rookie contract. There is going to be.
But are they willing to do it? Like it's ultimately up to the Haslams. Like you're meaning to tell me that it was Kevin Stefanski, the coach of the year, that it was his decision where it's like clearly Watson wasn't playing at a high enough level. And okay, with Winston, you get volatility, but you know, at least see what he had earlier while there was still a chance, to stay in the hunt. And at this point in the season, that's for not, you talk about the back half of the season with in-season Hard Knocks starting in less than 2 weeks now. God. That was not intentional. And look, like in Pittsburgh, we're thrilled that the Steelers are 8-2 because we knew going into the year we need to stack the wins on the front half of the year because the back half of the year, that schedule is brutal. So you're not alone there in having a rough second half of the season. That was done intentionally with the NFL knowing, wink, wink, hey, HBO Max, we're going to be featuring the AFC North teams on Hard Knocks. Not a coincidence. Mike.
Yeah, not coincidental at all. And no, listen, I hate to say anything nice about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Kevin Stefanski has been such a good X's and O's kind of guy and a guy that can scheme up a game. But again, I think just a big difference. Mike Tomlin doesn't let the culture in Pittsburgh change. And there are expectations out of that guy the minute you walk in the door. If you're a brand new Pittsburgh Steeler, I'm going to guess Mike Tomlin has a conversation with you right off the bat about what your expectations are and how you're going to be held accountable to those expectations. I don't know. Because again, I think this is more, we could talk about contracts and Deshaun Watson and quarterbacks and all that stuff, but culturally, I don't know that is the kind of culture that's been laid down in Cleveland. I don't know.
I'll get to Tomlin. Let's compare the two coaches. Do you want Stefanski back next year? I've heard some rumblings that Browns fans like get him out of here. I would imagine he's back next year. Yeah.
Listen, I have been always very on the Kevin Stefanski side of things. I'm moving towards the middle though. To watch a team quit. To watch a team give minimal effort the way that they did in this New Orleans game this last week, and to watch a team crumble into, again, one of the worst in football after what they did last year, And then to look at the record and go, all right, last year they were good. 2 years ago, they weren't good. The year before that, they were good. Is he building the kind of culture here? Is he really good on the X's and O's side of things? Yes. Is he building the kind of culture that sustains winning in Cleveland? I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned Tomlin at the start of the season, the odds makers, which are usually pretty good, had the over-under for the Steelers at 8.5, and I was just laughing to myself. Tomlin's in year 18, and I know Steelers fans love to point this out. No losing seasons. He's never been below 500. And on paper, going in with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields this season, you're paying them less than $5 million. So regardless of how you felt going into this year, having Russell Wilson and Justin Fields is better than Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph on more expensive contracts, which is crazy that even happened. So you go into this year saying, okay, if you can even get average, maybe even below average quarterback play, it's going to be an improvement. And it's been amazing. For the first time in years, I haven't hated watching the Steelers offensively. Is it perfect? No, far from it. But it's been a heck of a lot better than what the backlash is on Mike Tomlin. And what I mean by that is he's the victim of his own success. The Steelers haven't won a playoff game since January of 2017. But then I push back and I say, well, who had the Steelers quarterbacks been during that time span? A washed Ben Roethlisberger, which, look, 18 years in the league, he's headed to Canton. No problems there. You had Mitch Trubisky as a bridge quarterback. That didn't work. Don't let me forget about undrafted Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph early on, which you still went 8-8 somehow. I don't know how that happened. Like, if I'm making Mike Tomlin's Hall of Fame case, it's that he went 8-8 with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, not that he's won Super Bowls.
I remember losing to Duck Hodges. That was super fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So really then you had Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and now you finally seem to have things right for at least this season. All has been well through 4 starts with Russell Wilson. Justin Fields did a nice job to start the year to get this team off to a 4-2 start. And then Russ has come in and really played at a high level and proving that he has a little bit of gas left in the tank in year 13. A lot of people wrote Russ off. I don't think he is what he was in Seattle, but if he can at least even be competent, you can rely on a solid 1-2 punch with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren in the backfield, and then what is a very stout defense. That's where most of your salary cap is allocated. So that's my pushback for people who are like, oh, Tomlin, the lack of playoff success, 4 straight losses in the playoffs. Who have his quarterbacks been? And you look at the AFC, you got to have a guy, especially in the AFC. I'll land there, Michael, and pass it back to you.
No, 100%. And listen, I think, just talking about this game and, here we are this late in the season and we're finally seeing the Browns and the Steelers. But I think there's some interesting storylines. You hit on one with the quarterbacks. I think a lot of people are watching really closely what Pittsburgh is doing with the quarterbacks because Justin Fields finds new life. That's not surprising with the way the Bears have handled quarterbacks. He finds new life in Pittsburgh. And then Russ steps in and Russ looks decent again. And he's played well there in Pittsburgh. So, as somebody that covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, do you view them thinking like, hey, maybe Justin Fields is a guy that we can keep here? Maybe, we don't know how long Russ is going to play, but Justin's a guy we can keep here for a long time. Is that kind of the game plan right now in Pittsburgh, you think?
Yeah, and I know Russ is going to want to get one last deal. He's in his mid-30s, again, year 13. How far they could potentially go on a run, and I'm talking about a potential Super Bowl here. We'll see. I don't want to get out ahead of myself, but they've been playing at that high level where they have to be considered among the contenders in the AFC. Personally, I'd put Kansas City, and I would also put Buffalo ahead of the Steelers at this standpoint. But with Fields, it's like the thing that's amazing with getting both Fields and Wilson. Are either of them all-pro caliber quarterbacks? No. But certainly they're capable of being starters. Like, that to me is abundantly clear. So I credit general manager Omar Khan, where it's like another man's trash is his treasure. and going to acquire both of those players. Now, how the Steelers handled the quarterback situation, because they named Russell Wilson a captain before the start of the season.
Right.
He has the calf injury to start the year. So clearly they wanted to start Russ right off the bat, but you get a bigger sample size to see what Fields could do. The biggest difference to me between Fields and Wilson has been this. Fields has the mobility and can run around and is a component of the running game. They actually used him in some packages against Baltimore this past week. But the way Russell Wilson has had success is it's as simple as this. His ability to get the ball to George Pickens, who is your best skill position player by far, has been the differentiator between what he brings to the table at the quarterback position and Fields. That's the reason why Wilson is the starter at this standpoint. But from a long-term standpoint, I wouldn't want to just let Fields walk in free agency. Now, what kind of deal both of those players are going to want, they're going to be able to go get money from another team. That being said, do you want to go to an organization to where, sure, there's a ton of guaranteed money for, say, 2 or 3 years, but then you might be out of the league if it doesn't work out with that franchise? Ideally, you try to run it back with both players. The likelihood of that, though, I do think that the Steelers are going to have to pick one, but it's also kind of dictated, how do you perform the rest of the season? Can you actually go on a run in the playoffs and contend for a Super Bowl? So, like, how this plays out, you knew Russ wasn't going to be on a bench as a 9-time Pro Bowler,
Right.
regardless of how well Fields played. But I also think Fields is going to get into the mix a little bit here too, because he's so talented. Like, the reason he was brought in for some packages at the end of that Ravens game is, hey, we have to run the ball in this situation. With Fields on the field, he forces a defense to play an honest 11 on 11 defensively, because they have to account for his legs and his mobility.
You brought up George Pickens, and I am interested to hear your thoughts on the development of George Pickens, because I will say this: I've never been the biggest George Pickens guy. I've kind of viewed him as I've seen him play, and as somebody that has to watch his team go up against him on an annual basis. He always seemed, coming into this year, like the guy that is going to make 1 or 2 big catches against your team. He'll make spectacular catches, but is he the guy that you're going to rely on to get the ball in his hands over and over and over again throughout the game and be that primary guy? And it really does. It seems like this year he has turned more into that. So have you noticed him kind of turn a corner this season in just becoming more of a complete wide receiver for the football team?
His connection with Wilson is, you can just see it. You can see it in the body language and trying to get that energy channeled in the right way, because he's at a real fork in the road. And what I mean by that is, we're talking about, okay, do the Steelers offer Wilson or Fields a big contract in the offseason? What that does to be able to sign other players. Pickens is in year 3 right now. So he wasn't a first-round pick. He was a second-round pick out of Georgia. He's got to be thinking, okay, this can go one of 2 ways. I could either be out of the league like Chase Claypool, who scored 11 touchdowns as a rookie. I could go the way of Deontay Johnson, who's now in Baltimore. He got traded away from Carolina. Didn't have a catch against his former team this past week. And I know he's still new. He's still getting snaps and learning the playbook and all of that. There's something about wearing the black and gold at the receiver position. Mike, it's like putting on the Superman cape. So if he's smart, even if he can make more money elsewhere, even if it's a little bit less in Pittsburgh, if I'm Pickens, I'm channeling that energy in, how can I be the most productive player for my team right now? Also considering, look at how much money that teams are allocating to premium elite level receivers.
Right.
You have to pay a ton of money for the top level talent at the receiver position. So if I'm Pickens, I got to keep doing my thing. And he's done that consistently for the most part this year. There's been some maturity. He's got a few Aki plays that are out there where it's like, what the hell is Pickens doing on this play? It's a little bit goofy.
It's good for those.
When that's channeled the right way, he's as talented as any receiver in the league. So that's where he's at right now. If I'm him, look at the big picture to where he's going to want to get that huge contract, Pittsburgh or elsewhere. But if I'm the Steelers, I want to hang on to him and keep him in a Steelers uniform. there's something putting. I mean, I could go through the list of receivers that just their elite level production status. I mean, Antonio Brown's the most prime example I could give you there. But
Sure.
there's something about putting on the black and gold if you're a receiver where it's just like it gives you superpowers.
So, Mark, I got about 5 minutes left with you. So let's dive in just real quickly to the sides of this game. Obviously, the Browns offensively, they struggle to score points. They have been moving the ball better with Jameis Winston. He threw for almost 400 yards against the New Orleans Saints this last week, but they've really struggled to try to run the ball, and that has been such bread and butter for them when they've been good. They have not been able to run the ball at all this year. Against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense, like you said, that's where they've put the money. That's where they've put the focus. And it's been one of the league's elite defenses this season. So is there an area with the Pittsburgh Steelers defense? Do you feel like there's any spots there that they've been susceptible throughout the season? Or is this a matchup you're looking at going, they should be in feast mode with Jameis Winston, his propensity to try to make plays happen, and having guys that are kind of ball hawking out there, or are there areas you think the Browns could attack?
You would think feast mode, but the division game kind of negates that.
Right.
What I look at is, okay, opposite TJ Watt, and Nick Herbig has played well when he's gotten his opportunities, but he's still coming off injury. I know that on deadline day, the Steelers traded for Preston Smith to get more depth at the edge rushing position. That's kind of where I would target if it is Herbig, because he's more of a speed rusher. Alex Highsmith, who I do not expect to play on Thursday night due to injury, he's got a little bit more weight than Herbig does. So that's kind of where I would try to attack. I mean, the Steelers are coming off a very emotional win. I mean, Patrick Queen at the linebacker position, you try to shore up that position, going up against his former team this past week in the Ravens. So a big emotional win. That's kind of where I would try is up front. I mean, TJ Watt's going to do TJ Watt things. And I know the Browns have had injuries along their offensive line too, but yeah, you've got to establish the ground game because you don't want to get one-dimensional against this defense where TJ Watt and company can just pin their ears back if you're in a situation where you know that you have to pass the ball. I also think that the Browns are going to want to get some revenge for their guy, Nick Chubb, who I know is back from an injury, but remember, it was Minkah Fitzpatrick, a year ago that it was on the hit that blew out Chubb's knee. So I'd want to get some redemption there. I don't think that was a dirty hit a year ago. But if I were Cleveland's standpoint where it's like, hey, let's rally around this. Let's rally around Nick Chubb because this was the guy who really, I have nothing but good things to say about Nick Chubb.
Right.
I'll tell you a quick story too. I was at his college debut as a starter at Georgia going against my alma mater, the University of Missouri. And we were psyched. Todd Gurley was out due to an autograph scandal. And it was like, oh, this freshman Chubb's the starter. Maybe we've got a shot. He moved the ball against my beloved Missouri Tigers the entire afternoon.
Yeah. Well, Nick does that. And again, but it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle for the Browns. And again,
I would want to establish him and then not put too much on Winston because Winston, high risk, high reward. There's just volatility there to where he can make all the throws and he can get you back in a game too, but he can also throw some interceptions.
Well, I think you hit on one thing, though, a big, highly emotional game for Pittsburgh. And listen, it does feel like Pittsburgh just plays nothing but close games, doesn't it? It feels like it is it is constant. Every time I see a Pittsburgh score, it's like one team's got the ball at the end of the game with a chance to win it. And it's either Pittsburgh hanging on for dear life or it's the other team maybe coming up just shy. But it's been nothing but close games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I actually think we might see that in this week, as weird as it is, but a short week off an emotional win, a hard-fought win against the Ravens. And you just hope, if you're a Browns fan, you hope there's some level of pride that these guys are playing with at this point. You just got your doors blown off by the New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Of all teams you just watched. They ran for like what felt like 7,000 yards in one game. So you feel like there's got to be a level of pride on Thursday night at home. But Mark, I'm going to let you have the last word as we look at this game. Just kind of your thoughts on what we're going to see in Cleveland on Thursday night with the Browns and the Steelers.
The Thursday night games are always like, it's just very vanilla. You don't have as much preparation, the game planning, getting your body ready. I do think that the Steelers will take care of business on the road. I know they're a slight favorite. You talk about Mike Tomlin in one-score games. Since he took over in 2007, I got to give my guy Alex Kozora a shout out for this stat. No other team has a higher win percentage in one-score games over that span than Pittsburgh. It's a 61% win rate. 5-2 this season. We saw it again this past week against Baltimore, and I think that happens again come Thursday night. I do think it'll be a one-score game. I think it will be close, but just how Pittsburgh's playing this season, how Cleveland's playing this season, I do like the Steelers on the road. Classic makings of a trap game, though. I'm going to put it out there, and I can't believe that I'm saying it, but classic makings of that. I do think that the Steelers will take care of business, but that's why they play the games.
I freaking hate being the team that can be a trap game again. It's been 25 years of the Browns being like, well, it could be the trap game. And we're back. We're back into being the trap team. Now, I think it's, again, just the propensity of the Steelers to have close games. I think that is going to play itself in to this game, but I don't see how anybody could pick the Browns for any reason against any team at this point. And so I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a weird atmosphere, I think, down there in Cleveland this week because people are pissed and fans are disconnected a little bit and the players are disconnected a little bit. But I do think the Browns come out and play a decent football game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think the Steelers walk away with a one-score victory.
Hey, there is a silver lining. Have you seen the John Fanta reaction videos after the game?
Yeah, we love John Fanta.
Must watch if you're a Browns fan, and it provides some therapy. His sarcasm, his fandom, his passion for the Browns. If there's any silver lining of the 2024 season, watch his reaction videos.
The emergence of Fanta. That's been the win for us in Cleveland. The Fanta emergence. All right, Mark, I'm going to let you go, man. This has been great. It's been great catching up with you. I'll reach back out in a couple weeks because we're going to do this right back again. But it's always great talking with you about the Browns and the Steelers. Coming up on Thursday night, you could catch Mark, Bleav In Steelers Podcast. I know you're probably not going to pull yourself to actually go. I know it's hard with Steelers and all that. But if you want to know what people in Pittsburgh are saying about this matchup, you want to know what Mark's saying about this matchup, the Bleav In Steelers Podcast, Mark covers it there. Appreciate you for coming on, man. And hope you have a great rest of your day. And in all sincerity, I hope Thursday night is miserable for you.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for having me. And if your fans want to troll me on YouTube as well, you can find our show over there. Just look for my name, Mark Bergin. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Mark. See you later. All right, Mark Bergin. Shout out to him. Bleav In Steelers Podcast, Browns and Steelers. I got to run. We got garage beers coming like right now. So I'm going to go. I'm going to hit the bathroom, grab my beers, and I'll be right back on Garage Beers Live. It'll start in about 5 minutes. So go get yourself something and come back on. We're talking Browns. We're talking Buckeyes. We're talking Cavs and so much more. Garage Beers happening now. This has been the Doghouse on the OBR Streaming Network. Until next week, cheers. Go Browns.